Good day, everybody. We're going to start here in just a moment. We're seeing the registrants join one by one. Hope you're all having a great start to your day so far. We'll give it about 30 more seconds, and then we will get started. Shaz, you ready to do this?
Looking forward to it, Dave.
All right. Well, let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to our webinar for today. My name is Dave Norton. I am the president of Vroozi, and I'm thrilled to be with you. I'm also very happy and excited to introduce my business partner and our founder and CEO of Vroozi, Mr. Shaz Khan. How are you today, Shaz?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Dave.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to have you here today. And we've got a number of participants joining us around the globe, and we have a great agenda today. Now, just as an FYI before we get started, for all of you who are participating, this webinar will be recorded, and we will make sure to give you access as soon as the recording has been completed. So be watching for that to come across your email inbox. Second, for all of those who are participating, if you have any questions that you'd like to send our way, please share those questions in the question box there on the right, and those will appear here on the end, and we'll be able to address your questions at the end of our conversation here. So looking forward to answering your questions. All right, well, let's get started. We're going to tell you a little bit about who Vroozi is, what we are, and why it matters to you. And I'm very excited to be able to have this conversation because I want to share with you some of the reasons why I was so excited to join Vroozi. As the new president here, I was very excited to learn about Vroozi, and especially Shaz, being an industry expert as it relates to spend tech management. Now, Shaz, one thing that really piqued my interest and really drove me to making the decision to join you as a business partner was your passion for your customers and helping them digitize or digitally transform their business. And I'd love to know more about that and where that passion came from. I understand that you had a consulting practice and you sold that to start this business. Tell us about that journey as we get started here.
Well, thank you, Dave. I think as we look at the landscape and kind of the trajectory of my career, it was always focused around using technology to enable really great outcomes for customers across supply chain operations, finance operations, and general business operations. And one thing that we noticed in our consulting businesses is that we would put in systems consistently, which would take a huge amount of time, resources, complexity. And then when we would turn the systems on and hand them over, it was very difficult to gain the end user adoption to validate or justify the investment made prior. And so people were actually avoiding the systems. And so Vroozi really came to fruition based on the premise to consumerize business to business commerce transactions, to make technology approachable, affordable, and scalable as companies grow and look to newer technologies to enable incredible outcomes for their organization. And we look at our platform as something that should not be avoided, it should be embraced. Right? People
I
should not
love it.
find ways to go across different mediums to leverage the platform.
Well, we look forward to learning more about Vroozi here in just a moment and also discussing the 4 tips that our clients have been asking us about as it relates to how can we improve AP invoice processing in the modern day world. So as it relates to our agenda today, 4 key items we'll be covering is a little bit more about Vroozi, digitizing the process that you've just mentioned, as well as the 4 tips to improving the AP invoice processing. We also want to be able to have a Q&A session with our clients and customers and visitors who have joined us today. So as it relates to Vroozi, Shaz, why don't you just dive in and share a little bit more about the feature sets, the platform. I think it's interesting for people to know that our mission is just what you talked about, digitizing the process, enabling intelligent business marketplace. You've done this out of Los Angeles, California, where the sun always shines, servicing the Fortune 1000 customers, both in the enterprise and mid-market world. But Vroozi is a complete procure-to-pay solution. So tell us a little bit more about that and why Vroozi should matter to those participating today.
I think for us, why Vroozi is we wanted to basically syndicate and synchronize three major components of an organization, which is corporate finance, procurement, and IT, and do it in a singular tech stack with really good feature sets that every stakeholder could leverage for their business operations. And so tying that into one seamless process provides multiple benefits because everybody is on the same level playing field, first and foremost. Secondly, there is tremendous integration, not in terms of just systems, but people that are required to basically make 1 and 1 equal 6. So for example, procurement and their mission of being able to negotiate really great prices and find the best suppliers to do work for an organization and manage supplier relationships is inextricably tied to the downstream AP function, who are responsible for ensuring that those suppliers are onboarded correctly, that they're paid on time, and that those relationships are not strained. They are actually maximized. And so you have this really winning formula when you have people working in a singular way in a platform that you can actually generate incredible business results. Now tie that all into the capabilities within Vroozi. We wanted to also ensure that we provide best-in-class feature sets and capabilities in a no-code, self-service configurable platform. We always say software experiences should be configurable, not customizable.
I like that. Well, we're going to talk more about an all-in-one platform and the power of Vroozi, but I think everybody's eager to hear about the 4 tips that we've got in store for them today. So we'll jump forward as it relates to some of our buyers and suppliers, and I think we have another webinar topic in the near future as it relates to how we can best manage and help our clients manage suppliers. Some of the valued customers that Vroozi offers today are here on the screen that we currently support. We're grateful for each one of them. But let's dive in to these 4 tips in improving our AP invoice processing, shall we, Shaz?
Let's do it.
So this cartoon really grabbed my attention. When you see here at the bottom, it says accounts payable, the check is in the mail. Do you know how many times I've heard that throughout my career? And so many times we find ourselves in manual processes, or you've got all these hundreds or even thousands of queries wanting to know, where's my check? Where's my payment? And people don't have answers, whether that's somewhere down the line in the process, on the accounting team, the controllers, wherever it may be. And nervous feelings start to be generated, and pressure starts to mount, and frustration, and an erosion of trust. So this really encapsulated a lot of the feelings that can be generated in today's modern day world. But tell us a little bit about these 4 tips, and then we're going to dive into each one in more detail.
Well, wonderful, Dave. And when you look at the accounts payable department, this is an area that is absolutely ripe for modernization. There are so many opportunities that corporate finance, accounts payable departments can look at to really enable technology as a massive multiplier in their business, from a productivity boost play to a supplier relationship play to also just general cash flow management and treasury management of the business. And when done right, following these steps, this also has, as we talked about up front, a absolute connectivity piece to upstream procurement activities for additional cost savings during contract negotiations with some of the suppliers that you actually work with. And I'll explain a little bit about that kind of cohesion downstream. But the 4 tips that we have, and quite honestly, we could probably fill up a couple hour presentation with about 12 tips. But we distilled this down to about 4 tips. First and foremost, extracting data with AI. Second, automating invoice routing and exception handling. Third, digitizing your supplier relationships as much as possible. And then, of course, power is in the data. How can you leverage data for predictability and generating incredible outcomes for your business?
All right. Well, let's get into the first one as it relates to extracting data with artificial intelligence. Now, this has been a journey, I think, in society as it relates to artificial intelligence. What is it? How does it help? How can we apply it? Years ago, technology officers within organizations had roadmaps as it relates to artificial intelligence. And we have seen over the last 6 and 12 months an absolute surge in implementation of artificial intelligence, different use cases, and really dynamic outcomes. Share with us how you envision AI being embedded and implemented into a solution like a Vroozi for those who are participating on our call today.
Absolutely. So any accounts payable department should be really, really intrigued and interested in this specific topic. And what this topic really focuses on is, in today's environment, you have a number of invoices in many different formats that might come in via regular mail, fax, even an email PDF. And you will be taking that document and basically transposing the information on that document from one area to a system, a financial system of record in which you will be posting that invoice into. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced, you'll be leveraging what we call optical character recognition capabilities, OCR. Even with those older OCR technologies, that provides a little bit of a benefit, but they're still wholly inadequate for where AI is today. And where AI is today is that you can actually leverage algorithms to read the words on a page in an invoice, whether that's structured, typed content that's coming out from a billing system, whether that's handwritten notes, whether that's imagery on an invoice. You can use what we call cognitive optical character recognition to intelligently extract every single piece of data required to then populate in the screen. Now imagine an AP processor who could very well take 10 to 15 minutes to process one invoice and take that same invoice and bring it into a AI-based engine that can understand, interpret, populate, and load the data within 15 to 20 seconds. That boost is off the charts. And
That's a
with
game
the
changer.
it's an absolute game changer. And what I would also offer is, don't sell the AI engine short, challenge them with any system. Most companies, when they go to this OCR, they do what I call the cheat codes, which is if there's a 100 line item invoice, they'll take the header information and maybe take one line item, consolidate that all, and then put the total. Great. You've proven that you can process the invoice at speed. But from a financial control standpoint, are you really itemizing and gaining visibility of what you're spending money on? And the answer is absolutely not. So the question is, why aren't companies looking to extract every single piece of data required to populate if the technology is available to do it? Because it becomes a game changer as it relates, as you rightly said, for the financial controlling. It removes manual data entry. It allows for real-time error correction. And you can do it in multiple languages. So if you're a global organization, you shouldn't be limited based on the character sets on the invoice. Now, what we've seen when you're extracting data using AI capabilities is you're reducing your processing costs by up to 60%. And more importantly, you're improving your STP, straight through processing rates, which is an absolute metric that every AP department should be measuring. How many invoices do I need to touch as an organization? And we see here on the bottom, the average cost to process an invoice, according to Ardent Partners, is $10.18. AP departments should absolutely strive to have that number below $5. Okay? Those are real cost savings that can be reinvested in the business and free up valuable time for personnel to focus on other strategic types of areas of their business.
All right, cutting that process and that fee in half sounds like another great topic for webinar. And we already have questions as it relates to artificial intelligence, which we're going to address at the end of our webinar here. So a lot of great activity and interaction so far with this webinar. All right, second item is automating invoice routing and exception handling. I was just in Houston yesterday and this week with some clients, and this very topic was brought up as it relates to improving the time, the efforts, the supplier information. And in fact, this individual for 2 years had been pleading with his executives on implementing a technology that would assist them in this type of a process. 6 times, this individual was told no, and finally, on the 7th request, relentlessness was finally approved. Tell us why customers are so passionate about fighting for a solution as it relates to automating invoice routing and managing exceptions.
Well, we can, Dave, we can take a look at AP departments today, and the job, if you look at how these departments have decentralized or centralized AP capabilities, the reality is that a quarter of the invoices that come in have exceptions. Okay, that means 1 out of every 4 invoices that come in, and you extrapolate that to thousands of invoices a month to millions of invoices a year, in some cases with organizations. And that is an extremely, extremely costly exercise. We kind of joke, and it's called kind of shoe leather costs. The shoe leather costs are chasing down the right people to figure out, what do I do with this exception? Now, again, leveraging the theme of AI, how can you ensure that you are not increasing your processing time, delaying payments, straining your supplier relationships based on this volume of exceptions that occurs in the business? And the key is that when you're putting invoices into a platform or tool that has the built-in capabilities to identify these exceptions, which could be price, PO mismatches, a big one is incorrect supplier information that's not updated. And you're also having that intelligent matching algorithm, where if it's a PO-based invoice, you can have a 2 or 3-way match intelligently to facilitate straight-through processing in your business. Also, the AP department is not just in one area. You could have individuals and resources with hybrid workforce that is spread across different territories, different regions. So you need to provide the ability where business is not stopped by having mobile notification services that can let individuals know to action an invoice with a predictive or proposed outcome. So for example, if you have a price PO mismatch for whatever reason, the system can provide some level of predictability or proposal that suggests that you should pay the invoice price as opposed to the PO price based on trends. And most importantly, and this is an area that I think gets lost, and it should be brought to the forefront. How often are the departments communicating the resolutions to the suppliers such that when the suppliers send the invoices again, they have a better chance of those invoices being processed correctly? Now, when you tie all that up, and when you start limiting those exceptions and you bring that exception rate down below 10%, you are improving STP, straight through processing rates. You're improving the amount and volume of invoices that you can process. And you're leading out to incredible financial outcomes because you don't need to be chasing all of these types of exceptions. And one other element that I think is really, really important, when you have a flurry of what we call invoices that might not reference a purchase order or non-PO invoices, Oftentimes, and this is dating me, but 25 years ago, we used to have a coding stamp that we put onto an invoice. We would basically take that invoice, walk it over to the respective individual who would handwrite the actual GL account structure that would need to be required to expense the line item against. And in today's environment, you have incredible DNA on an invoice, which can actually allow you to determine what the right coding is. So why not leverage algorithms to propose coding as well and suggest accounting so that you can even further decrease the time it takes to understand what is the right method and bookings to do against that invoice.
Okay, great. One question we have is how often are you seeing mobile access for approvals? How often are they approving invoices through their mobile device? Do you have an
Well,
opinion on that? Do you have data on that?
well, we are seeing a tremendous upsurge in that, especially with the advent of the pandemic, where we had very disparate workforces working from home or in a hybrid environment. And those individuals were able to get great information on the invoice document within the secure email, and they were able to approve it directly within app. Now, I will caution, when you're approving an invoice, you want to be able to also be able to see the appropriate data, right? And so you can have a couple of launch points. You can have that email notification launch you with an app to get further details, or you can trust the system to also give you a predictability score saying that this invoice is typically approved based on these criteria. We suggest you approve it, which again improves the trust format in terms of the approval cycle.
All right. Well, let's keep moving forward. Let's talk about suppliers, connecting them in a marketplace electronically. What are the benefits? Why do we do this?
This is to me an incredibly important area and an area that what I call table stakes. When you have a tremendous spend volume with what I call your tier one managed suppliers, most often than not, those suppliers have what are called electronic integration means to communicate in sensitive documents between your system and their platforms as well. And so this turns out to be what we call CXML or EDI electronic invoices. Now, a majority of the supply base within organizations, our findings are not digitally connected to an organization, creating this proverbial black hole of information, not only for the supplier, but also for the buyer. And you also want to be thinking about how do I provide self-service capabilities to my suppliers such that they do not have to focus on email inquiries or phone calls or basically static binary transactions back and forth where they're sending something and then they're waiting for a response. You want to empower the supplier to go into a secure portal, to be able to get the relevant information they need, and then be able to communicate with you if they need to escalate. Right? And when you're doing that, when you're focusing on this electronic integration end to end, now what you're doing is you're reducing those phone calls and increase the AP department. The AP department can focus on providing those self-service tools to suppliers so that they can basically be self-sufficient. And you're improving pricing and contract terms. And I always preach this. The very work accounts payable is doing to digitize those supplier relationships has an absolute mutual benefit to the procurement organization. Because when the procurement organization is doing their renegotiation of contracts with those suppliers, and the supplier saying, hey, I'm digitally enabled with you guys end to end, what are you doing? You're reducing the processing costs for that supplier as
Right.
well. And so that allows you to take those savings and say, I'd like to have better terms on my contract. And you know what? Those conversations go very, very well because you're already embedded in an electronic transaction format. Okay. And then lastly, what I would say is payments also I really put into this mode of the electronic supplier connectivity. We still live in a environment where we have a tremendous amount of paper checks, emergency checks. Focus on digitizing your payment streams, whether you're looking at electronic funds transfer, advanced ACH, the use of virtual cards, all of those should be looked at as payment modalities so that you can go check free.
I love it. Shaz, we have one question, and instead of waiting till the end, I'm going to throw it in here because we're talking about approvals and mobile and payments. One of our customers or one of our participants is asking, is the approver getting an email or some type of a notification if they chose to download the mobile app? Do they still get a reminder?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We want to provide as much information to the approver as possible and also reminder notifications to action certain items. The other thing that I would say is that when you're orchestrating processes within a single tech stack, you can actually also send those invoices digitally to the corporate buyers or the employees that made the initial purchase so that they can actually validate the invoice on your behalf so that you can have the trust and confidence that this invoice is valid. And oftentimes, again, it's a very siloed environment. There's just data coming in and being processed, but how often are we really looking at, well, is this data accurate? Is there fraud? Are these duplicates? Did this really get ordered? And so doing that all within one system with an AI sequencing allows you to mitigate the risk.
Terrific. One other comment I'll just add, an organization down in Houston, as I mentioned, I was just there this week. They had stated that their inbound phone calls from suppliers on invoices and accounts payable, et cetera, reduced by over 75% because of technology like this as it relates to Vroozi. So again, the impact is tremendous as it relates to connecting your suppliers electronically and what it can mean for you and your accounting team. All right, the fourth tip and final tip here is leveraging data for predictability. Now, when you think about action needing to be taken, when you think about optimization, talk to us about leveraging data.
Well, this is a really important point, and again, one of the things that we look at when we work with the world-class organizations that leverage our systems and tools is we first look at, tell us about your metrics, tell us about your cycle time, the trends that you see, and oftentimes those metrics are very hard to extract or present. And so we look at it as kind of a just greenfield opportunity. Today, there's very limited visibility into AP metrics, such as cycle time, trend analysis. As you leverage tool sets, how do you leverage AI to do all the things that you need to detect duplicates, identify potential fraud, speed up cycle time, and how do you keep a ledger of these activities so you can keep a historical count of all these activities so that your system can continue to learn? And when you look at tool sets and platforms, you want a system that what we would call continuous learning platform, that as the data comes in, it identifies, it extrapolates, it looks at the data, and then basically leverages that data so that it can provide much better information downstream to the end user. What is that going to do? That's going to provide significant speeding up of financial closing times. You're going to have automated accrual reports where it proposes to you, these are the accruals that we need to look at. You're going to have visual dashboards with real-time analytics into process and performance and improvement. And you're going to also identify areas for optimizing your payments. And this is a really great area where AP can also take leadership positions by providing and accepting early pay discounts to accelerate cost savings and mitigate the risk of payment errors. Let me just give a real example on this. If I'm able to take $100 savings on an early pay discount, and I extrapolate that over 20, 30,000 invoices, that's serious money we're talking about. That can, again, be reinvested back into the business. And so where's predictive analytics? Predictive analytics is the use of statistics and modeling techniques to forecast future outcomes, right? And so any organization, the gold is always going to be in the data. The data should tell you where you need to be and what are the things that you should do to have better improvements and process capabilities.
Shaz, could we schedule a webinar where we talk more about the extensive use of data as it relates to optimization, time savings, ROI, predictability? Does that sound like a topic we could tackle?
I think so.
All right, let's do it. Well, as we move to the conclusion of our presentation and our time together here, really just a call out as it relates to our modern AP department. And as we think about out with the old and in with the new, looking at the life cycle of an invoice, we look to the old ways of doing business versus the new. This really is changing the game. Tell us about the impact to our participants and their organization. Thinking about a singular tech stack that embeds AI capabilities as it relates to putting them into one box. You know, as you think about a Vroozi customer, they can have all of these features and capabilities in one platform. Talk to us about those benefits.
Well, again, I think it speaks to the kind of the passion area of Vroozi. We're here to solve complex problems. In no way are we suggesting that uh, the AP department is a simple area to optimize. AP department is faced with a number of different challenges on a day-to-day basis. And the criticality of getting these invoices paid and paid on time has direct impacts on supplier relationships as well as cash flow within the business. When you look at the old way of doing things, which is still largely manual or with limited technology that had basically rolled up capabilities in terms of uh, data extraction and population, how do you basically optimize every single life cycle of an invoice and digitize it? And the answer is, well, 10 years ago, it was pretty hard to do that. But now with the advent of AI and cognitive OCR and machine learning algorithms and robotic process automation, you can actually orchestrate these processes in an intelligent, integrated, and intuitive manner that can also feed into your upstream procurement opportunities. And so when you look at the new modern AP department, these are areas that we look to have companies strive to as their North Star. If there's a vision statement or a charter that accounts payable departments can look at, take a look at some of these new items and see if you can make these a reality within your organization.
It's a great question and a great challenge. And as you think about the vision you've just painted, taking everything from the ingestion of an invoice all the way through payment, this is a slide and I think an overview of the capabilities of instead of purchasing multiple platforms or multiple touch point or point solutions, there are platforms like a Vroozi that bring it all together in one tech stack that can help you save a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money in this entire procure to pay process, specifically as it relates to AP automation. Now, when we think about invoice management and the results that can be driven, here on the screen, you're seeing some of the results driven by our Vroozi clients. Many reporting up to an acceleration of 75%, which is tremendous. They've told us over and over again they're eliminating the maverick spend that they've seen in their organization. No training was needed because of the cognitive OCR you talked about. And there's organizations like Vroozi that have different languages. We are a global organization supporting global clients. So we have over 60 languages that we're able to translate from an OCR standpoint. And this will, of course, eliminate a lot of manual key entries of invoices. Of course, eliminating overspend, but also reallocating your full-time employees and being able to help you optimize your overall spend and operations as an organization. We're very proud of our raving fans and very grateful for those raving fans of Vroozi. And if you have any questions as it relates to how Vroozi or how Shaz and his team can best support you, here's our email addresses. We do have 2 questions we're going to tackle before we wrap up here. Shaz, is that okay if we take on these 2 questions?
Perfect.
All right. One is a limitation question, and one is a speed question. The first question that came in, is there a limit in the amount of invoices the Vroozi system can handle on a monthly basis?
No, there is no limit. We work with companies that have a few thousand invoices a month to hundreds of thousands invoices a month. So there is no limit. And again, how do you even the playing field? Well, you leverage really, really good technology to extract data from invoices so that you can speed the processing through.
Excellent. All right, the next question. For participants on this call and others who are going to view this, they are considering different solutions like a Vroozi. But as part of their ROI calculation, they're asking how quickly can we see the impact from implementing a system like Vroozi?
Well, again, I think this is one of the major drivers for us as an organization. When we talk about business transformation, we're not in the business of long implementation cycles. When we look at putting in the tech, we're talking about turn on ready AI to read those invoices, no training required. And so we like to see companies seeing those types of results within 3 months.
Excellent. Well, Shaz, thank you so much for letting me join you as a business partner here at Vroozi. Just like we've enjoyed this conversation, there are many more to be had with many of our participants who have joined us today and many others who weren't able to join us. So on behalf of Shaz and myself, we at Vroozi want to thank you for participating in our webinar today. We hope that these 4 tips will drive tremendous value for you and your organization. Now, coming up next will be our next webinar schedule. That'll be April 3rd, same time, same place. So we'll be sharing this invitation to you and your peers. And the topic will be how to supercharge your procurement operations in SAP with a B2B marketplace. So any of you that are SAP ERP users, you're going to want to join us in supercharging your procurement operations. So on behalf of Shaz and the Vroozi team, Dave Norton here, thanking you for joining us, wishing you a very happy rest of your week. Take care, everybody.